Taking a look at what's happening in Washington, the Mueller probe into Russian meddling in the U.S. election has thrown up at least 2 suspects. Their interrogation could provide more clues, perhaps leading to the president himself. Could Mueller be sacked? What could be the fallout? Here's a report.
There's a new buzz on Capitol Hill, and it concerns Robert Mueller, the man whose investigations into Russia's meddling in the U.S. elections have thrown up 2 suspects.
Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give shall be the truth?
The buzz is President Trump could sack Mueller, and it's being driven by Fox News, the only TV channel Trump deigns to talk to. Officially, the word is there are no plans to remove Mueller, but remember James Comey, the FBI chief? Trump sacked him, then proceeded to lie about why he did so, only to later admit he wanted to prevent a criminal probe into the activities of his associates. The wonder is Trump got away with that. Pundits say Trump's sacking of Comey was a grave abuse of power, but congressional Republicans went along with it. They overlooked his appointment of doubtful people like Betsy DeVos and Ben Carson. They ignored factual misstatements made under oath by Health Services Secretary Tom Price. They allowed the president to appoint unqualified family members to positions in the White House and seemed indifferent at the president's conflict of interest activities. The sense is that congressional Republicans may have struck a deal with Trump. They would support him in exchange for a bigger say in public policy issues. But would that deal hold if Trump sacks Mueller? The word is it could leave Trump vulnerable to impeachment, but it's important to note that Congress is Republican-dominated, so that may not go anywhere. The larger question is, where is American politics going under Trump? He's shown little respect for established norms and practices. The Republicans have preferred to go along with their president. For how long, it's clear. Bureau Report, WION.
Well, these arrests turn the spotlight yet again on the Trump administration and, most importantly, Donald Trump himself. How do these indictments damage the U.S. president? For now, none of these charges are directed at him, but they paint a rather grim picture. While the White House has distanced itself from these cases, the firing of former FBI Chief James Comey could come back to haunt the Trump administration. By firing Comey, the president opened himself up to allegations of obstruction of justice. The FBI began overseeing the Russia probe under Comey's leadership, who faced public and political pressure during his tenure. Now, a curious fact to note here is that Russia finds no mention whatsoever in Paul Manafort's indictment. After months of work, investigators charged Trump's former campaign manager with money laundering, tax evasion and conspiracy against the country. The U.S. president is right. These charges have no reference whatsoever to Manafort's work with the Trump campaign. So why are they subject of global headlines? Investigators in the United States have often resorted to charges of financial irregularities to bring criminals to justice. The charges against Manafort can be a means to an end. These charges can be easily proven before a judge and are used by investigators to put pressure on the accused to turn and cooperate in a bigger investigation. Will this tactic work for Manafort? That is something that we'll have to wait and see. For the moment, let's go to our expert panel. Stephen Golub, international affairs expert, with us from California. WION's own Kevin McAleese, correspondent from Washington, and Nicholas Grossman, international relations professor at the University of Illinois. Good evening to all of you. Kevin, let me begin with you. Where is this heading? Kevin, we're seeing fast-paced developments. The first casualty, if I may, has been Paul Manafort, but I'm sure there'll be bigger names coming up in the days ahead. Where do you see this heading?
Yes, that's right. You can expect more indictments to come as part of Robert Mueller's special prosecution. This is the style of this kind of investigation. It won't just be one individual. There will be more to come down the line. But today in Washington, the White House still reeling from that shock, a sort of hat-trick of surprises yesterday out of this Russia probe. We saw those 2 indictments, and of course we learned about the plea deal involving George Papadopoulos, someone who the president today has labelled as a low-level liar. But at the same time, Donald Trump is on tape congratulating this man on his excellent work during the campaign. So the White House and Donald Trump really going on the offensive, trying to distance themselves from these actors, including Paul Manafort, the first sort of high-profile blockbuster name on that list, who was Donald Trump's campaign chief. Now, where we're going with it, well, we're curious to see exactly what Donald Trump does with regards to Robert Mueller, because, of course, Donald Trump does have the authority, albeit in a roundabout way, to fire Robert Mueller if he thinks that he's outstepping his boundaries in this case. But that could be a backfire move, not even Republicans necessarily backing that idea.
Stephen, we've discussed this and we've been discussing this for months now. Do you see the US president cornered finally, or is this just a blip?
Oh, I think he's on his way to being cornered. The Manafort indictment, and let's also remember the indictment of Manafort's top assistant, a fellow named Gates, who actually stayed involved with the Trump crew longer than Manafort did. Both are efforts, and they may be very powerful ones, to get one or both of these fellows to turn on Donald Trump, to reveal what they know about illegal activities on his part or on the part of other top aides. And the incentives for them to turn on Trump are very, very powerful. Paul Manafort could well be facing the loss of most of all of his assets, and conceivably the rest of his life in jail, because these are serious charges involving a lot of money. So the noose is starting to tighten. Where it goes is another manner.
Nicholas, while we discuss it in TV studios and it rules the political discourse and newspaper headlines, how do American people see these developments, this long-drawn investigation, the very idea that there's a strong possibility that Russia may have installed its stooge in America's highest office?
It depends on which Americans. So the country is very divided, with about 35 to 40% strong supporters of Donald Trump, and perhaps 50-something strong opponents, and then maybe 5–10% in between. And they tend to get their news from different sources, and those sources say different things about it. So, well, there are many people who believe that there is at least some degree of cooperation between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. There are others who reject that as a witch hunt and who are arguing that it's only driven by politics. So it really depends on which ones you ask. But it seems like progressively more are coming to think that at least some of the members of the Trump campaign were conducting work with Russia in the process of trying to influence the presidential election. But the big question for politics is how many people actually in office will be convinced of that.
Yes, Kevin, for those who haven't followed this, just a clarification. While an indictment has happened, while big names have been thrown up in this investigation, there is no direct evidence linking the president to possible wrongdoing during the campaign.
Well, the big story over the last 48 hours was that plea deal of George Papadopoulos, because that was significant, because that actually, looking through those court papers, you can see that he was reaching out to a Russian. That Russian was promising George Papadopoulos dirt, Hillary Clinton emails. So that's significant, because this, remember, is in part an investigation into whether or not there was collusion between Russian agents, the Kremlin, and associates or campaign staff of Donald Trump. So this brings it right back to his front door, which is perhaps why you're seeing such a strong pushback against this man's credibility by the White House and by Donald Trump directly. He has never wanted to delegitimize his stunning election win with these reports that perhaps it was helped along the way by Putin's Russia. He's always denied that there was any collusion whatsoever. And certainly, you know, he's always railed against ideas of popular votes being won by Hillary Clinton. So this is Donald Trump wanting to send out a clear message to his base that the real story isn't collusion between his campaign and Russia. It's actually the dodgy dealings, as he puts it, of crooked Hillary and the Democrats. And this will be, you know, have no doubt about it, resounding well with his base at the moment.
Is this a bit of a catch-22 situation for the American president, Stephen? He's damned if he fires Mueller, he's damned if he doesn't.
Oh, yes, that's correct. But I think the chances of his firing Mueller, even though there would be tremendous political pushback, have actually increased recently because Trump may well be desperate. He may know, we don't know this for a fact at all, but Trump may know that he committed acts, whether it's illegal financial activities, collusion with the Russians, or obstruction of justice, that Mueller is going to get him for sooner or later. And if Trump knows that, then even though it would be an act of desperation to fire Mueller, that would be the preferable, could be the preferable course for him. There are other directions Trump could take this. He could try to grant, try to pardon his aides, although that's problematic for various reasons. He could get involved in some foreign conflict or heat up some foreign tensions, because sometimes that can serve to distract the American public. But he is increasingly cornered, and let's remember also that these indictments and this pleading of guilty by Papadopoulos could really just be the tip of the iceberg of what Mueller knows or what Mueller is in the process of finding out about Trump and the crowd around him.
And I have to say, Nicholas, that he's made considerable progress in a very short span of time, would you say?
Mueller? Yes, that he has moved faster than most expected, that very often these special counsel investigations can take multiple years. So far, this is less than a year. The FBI was already looking into Russia before Mueller's appointment, but after the firing of James Comey, that Mueller was given the job and was looking into it, and he's moved much more quickly than people thought. And in particular, the plea deal that Papadopoulos took also indicates that he has been working with the investigation for some time. So that could be, even though it doesn't explicitly say so, it indicates that he either has some recorded conversations, some written communications, perhaps was wearing a wire, other things that will potentially implicate other Trump officials. And it looks like Mueller is following a rapid shock and awe strategy where he wants to start with a big fish like Manafort, instead of following the traditional playbook from, say, mob investigations of starting small, getting small people to flip, and then working his way up. Instead, he went for a big strike with Manafort and with Gates and with Papadopoulos all at once. And I think it's likely that we will see continued effort moving a lot more quickly than people originally thought.
In the meantime, advice is pouring in for the president. The likes of Steve Bannon saying that he should fire his legal team, which is quote-unquote asleep at the wheel. I'm going to thank you all. Stephen Golub, Kevin McAleese and Nicholas Grossman, thank you for joining us. Allegations about Russia meddling in the U.S. elections have been around for some time now, as we've been reporting, with little to back it up until now. The Mueller probe has struck pay dirt with two characters central to the drama. They're Paul Manafort, former manager of the Trump campaign, and George Papadopoulos, a former Trump campaign staffer. While Manafort has his aide have been charged with conspiring to defraud the United States through his dealings with Ukraine-based politicians, Papadopoulos has admitted that he lied to the FBI on his dealings with Russian officials. Manafort has been charged mainly for his work with the Ukrainian political party known for its deep ties to the Kremlin. Manafort and his aide worked with several Ukrainian politicians, including pro-Putin leader Viktor Yanukovych. The charge sheet says that Manafort and his aide had hidden more than $75 million in offshore accounts in an attempt to avoid paying taxes in the U.S. These funds include undisclosed cash, which puts Manafort in an awkward position. On the other hand, George Papadopoulos is the first Trump aide to plead guilty in this case. He reportedly lied to the FBI about a series of meetings that he planned and attended. While the White House has distanced itself from him by calling him a volunteer, some evidence suggests that he was trying to arrange a meeting between Donald Trump and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. So it gets more interesting and doesn't end here, interestingly. Today, social media giant, in fact Facebook, revealed that posts by Russian-based operatives reached more than 100 million Americans. The company has uncovered 80,000 suspect posts across a 2-year period that could have influenced Americans in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. These disclosures are part of a written testimony given to the U.S. lawmakers. Facebook has already agreed to cooperate with the ongoing investigation by U.S. authorities. Earlier, Twitter found more than 2,000 accounts linked to Russian operatives. Technology giant Google's AdSense was also allegedly used as a medium to spread messages to suit a particular ideology or candidate. Google found that $4,700 were spent by Russian operatives during the election cycle. The story of Catalan separatist leader Carles Puigdemont has taken a comic twist just days after Spain's central government in Madrid dismissed the president of Spain's autonomous province of Catalonia. He's now in Brussels. Senior foreign editor Padma Rao has this report.
Within days of Spain dismissing Catalonia's regional government and announcing fresh elections in December, the mop-headed, smiling separatist Carles Puigdemont drove away, first to France's Marseille and then to Brussels. But the European Union, whose capital Brussels is, has already made it clear that it will not support Catalan separation. So what is the pugnacious Mr. Puigdemont doing there? He's on the run from Spain's prosecutor, who wants Mr. Puigdemont tried for sedition and sentenced to a 15 to 30-year jail term. Brushing off reports, Puigdemont said that he was not seeking asylum in Belgium, but was here not because it is the capital of Belgium, but because it is also the seat and capital of the European Union. Belgium is caught between the devil and the deep blue Mediterranean. EU states see each other as safe havens for refugees from outside the Union, not as dangerous nations creating refugees themselves. To give Puigdemont shelter anywhere in the European Union would be to violate the tenets of the EU's asylum policy. But to not support the fleeing freedom fighter would be in contravention of the EU's commitment to human rights. To shield Puigdemont would be to incur the wrath of Madrid, a fellow EU member. To not do so would possibly mean sending the man who has been in the international spotlight for months to a dark prison cell where he won't see the Catalan sun. The only path ahead may be reconciliation, forgiveness of Carles Puigdemont by the government of Spain and for talks to commence between Barcelona and Madrid. Indeed, there were plenty of instances over the previous weeks to prove that Madrid may well be inclined to negotiate rather than denounce Mr. Puigdemont. The Catalan leader himself says he has every intention of returning to his home province. The ball is back yet again in Madrid's court. It will have to pay attention because if it does not, there may be a very large country to the east of Europe which loses no opportunity to needle the European Union and may now well offer shelter to the Catalan leader. Padma Rao, WION.
First, they denied reports that they were building dams on the famous S-Bend, where the waters of Tibet's Yarlung Tsangpo turned to enter Arunachal Pradesh, where it is known as the Brahmaputra. The reports turned out to be true, raising concerns in Delhi that China may at some point block the flow of the river into India. Now reports in the Hong Kong media say that China is working on plans to tap water from the Tibet plateau and divert it to neighboring Xinjiang province, which is predominantly a desert. China has denied this report, but here's what the report in fact says. The plan calls for building an underground tunnel 1,000 kilometers long. It will begin at the headquarters of the Yarlung Tsangpo or headwater rather of the Yarlung Tsangpo or Brahmaputra in Tibet and will go across the Tibetan plateau into the desert in the Xinjiang province. The idea is to make the desert bloom and grow crops. The plan is ambitious, as most Chinese infrastructure plans tend to be, and Chinese engineers say that all the technologies and some of the engineering skills required are not quite there. They believe this is something which can be realized in about a decade, not immediately. But China is already testing some of those technologies in the Yunnan province bordering Myanmar, where it is building a 661-kilometer-long underground tunnel that will bring water from Yunnan Guizhou Plateau to the water-deficient central Yunnan province. Reports quoted engineers as comparing this project to the U.S. diverting the waters of the San Joaquin River to irrigate vast areas of California. The plan succeeded, but the river is perhaps the most heavily regulated in the world, resulting in mounting environmental and engineering problems. So is China playing games with water to the detriment of her neighbors? That conclusion seems inescapable. Look at what is happening on the upper reaches of the Mekong River, Asia's 7th longest. The Mekong flows from China's Tibet Plateau down to Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam and Laos, a distance of more than 4,300 kilometers. 60 million people depend on it for a livelihood. The Mekong Basin produces more than 100 million tons of rice, but China has already built a 990-megawatt dam in Yunnan and has plans for at least 11 more. The idea is to send water from southern parts of China to the arid north, which is running out of water. Water from here will be diverted to cities like Beijing that are seriously short of water. Typically, the Chinese government will not respond to questions about what happened downstream. Government statements make the routine claim that the interests of those downstream will be kept in mind. But China does not recognize the rights of lower riparian countries. It does not sign agreements with them. Its policy is all resources on Chinese soil belong to China.